All right, so I've extruded a couple of tubes here just to mimic like a cylindrical shape that you've made to turn into a mug. What I've done so far is I have run a couple of slabs that can be used as handles. Okay, I've extruded multiple different coils here. So we have different varieties of straight coils, as you can see, okay, of different thickness. And the extruder, which is over there, has even thinner. We also have square, hexagon, and flat ribbons. All right. Now the technique of putting on the handle is always going to be the same, but the way to get your handle, there are variations. So as I said, I rolled this through a slab roller, and then I just cut either a semicircle or a C, okay? Some people like the look of that, especially like if you have a small, like almost teacup, and then you could attach it like so. I'll cut this down a little bit so you get a better sense of scale. All right, so let's say it's an espresso cup or a teacup. You get the idea, like a small little one. And I saw this when I was working in a studio in Brooklyn called Shop Play, and I would see someone making teacups with this kind of handle. And I thought that was like the cleverest way. So whoever that potter is, sorry, I'm stealing your idea, but I think it's very smart, okay? And the same idea would work if you want to do something more like this, which can be quite rustic, okay? Now you can also, when you, like you normally would do with a slab, you can take a mold if you wanted to and put an impression in it. You can do it on both sides or one side, it's up to you. And then you can have that as well, especially if you've already decorated your mug, you can also decorate your handle like so and attach it that way, okay? Any one of these shapes that I've extruded can work as a handle. I certainly will use this on vases, like if I make a big thing and I'll have like a big sweeping sort of a handle like so. You can almost envision that, something, pinch that off a little bit. Something like really quite big and large. You get the idea? You can do a two-hand, that's a soup mug. People like that. If handles are not just for mugs, they can be for vases, they can be for a lot of things, pitchers. So you can, just because you want to put a handle on something. So this is really good, using the extruder to get different sort of looks of your handle that can work with the shape of your vase. It's a great way to go. You don't need to just go straight with it. You can be fancy too. So I will tend to maybe curl the handle a bit. I know I did this on a vase that I'll never sell. Looks like a Stelladoro cookie. I'm not that hungry. So you can change the shape. It doesn't have to be straight. You can give it curve, okay? One of the reasons why I wanted to extrude some of these is because you can do something fun with this, in which you twist them. Okay, and if you want to, you could just press it down a little bit, and now you'll have a sort of a vine handle. All right, so that's another idea. These that I extruded, which are flat, you can take one of our rolling stamps. Now you have texture, okay? And then you can attach that however you like, all right? So these are all different ways that you can come up with a handle and be decorative with the handle. Now there are other ways to make a handle aside from extruding or the slab. You can do what is always the funniest day in a ceramic class. You can do what's called pulling a handle. You're going to want some water. I, of course, went for warm water. You're going to need a large base, and you want to start prepping it kind of like in a cone shape already to a point. You're going to need a large base to hold it. Okay, so I'm going to turning and squeezing it as if it was a cylinder. Once you have something going here, try not to laugh. You want to get your hand wet, and then you want to start pulling down. This is what's called pulling a handle. Okay, you want to be gentle about it. You don't want to squeeze too hard. If you need an analogy, think of yourself as milking a goat or a cow. If you need another analogy, keep that to yourself. Like I said, it's always the funniest day in ceramic class. Okay. You can also see why I don't always show this method. We're all adults here, though. You guys can handle this.
Why would we do it this way? You could just push it through the thing.
Some people love the look of a hand-pulled handle. They love it for their work. Some people love to buy it. I find this a very laborious method, and I never do it. I only demo it so everyone knows all their options.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy. My left shoulder's aching me already, just holding this. So to me, this is a very wasteful way to do it, because it takes a while. And some people, they'll pull 5 feet long handles and cut them, and more power to them. I'm with you. I'd rather do any of the other methods. I'm going to show you my favorite method at the end, and that's the handle I'll use. I'm not kidding. My left shoulder is on fire right now.
Good workout.
Yeah, I have fairly strong shoulders, but I also have very beat up shoulders from all the pottery, and they're very stiff. I could really use someone really working them out. I don't think I have any serious joint issue. It's just years of working. So when you get this long enough, sometimes people will thin it out like so. Right? When you're ready and you're done with this, you can then flip it. That looks like a giant gourd, right?
Yeah.
And then here. Now, you can either leave it very heavily on the base, or if you're planning on doing multiple handles, as a lot of people do, because they don't just make one mug, they make 3, 4, 5. Just so you know, when it comes to making mugs, I have a rule of never doing more than 6 at a time. I found when I started going over doing 6, even though the mugs were good quality, by the time I got into mug 7, 8, especially at the very end, 10 and 11, the mugs were drying out, so the handles would crack off. So I might have thrown 10 mugs or 12 mugs, but I'm only keeping 8 of them because I had to get rid of the other ones. Where if I throw 6 mugs, I usually keep 6 out of 6 or 5 out of 6. So the numbers were more in my favor to get more mugs done. So you can cut this, and then a lot of people will have this hang off the side of a tabletop or something, and that way you start getting this curve to it. Again, I'm not a huge fan of this method, but I wanted you to know it. Now, my favorite kind of way to make a handle is to use what's called a handle maker. You can buy them, and I don't have a link, but I should probably have an affiliate store link. But you can buy them on Bailey's, you could buy them on Amazon, of course. You can buy them Sheffield. Now that is a ringtone. I like that ringtone though. Now this is not this is not a handle maker, but it's a good shape and it'll work in the same way. The handle maker I'm talking about, you want to go find a Kemper, K-E-M-P-E-R, handle maker or handled extruder. They come in 2 shapes. a large and a small. The small being for like teacups, small pitchers, things like that. The larger one is good for everything. What you want to do is have a block of clay. So like your blocks of clay are perfect if you have a nice, like straight even top on it, or you need to cut off like a top layer. That's great. I'm mimicking it by like pounding out one, like so. You would start at one end, pull all the way through, and then you want to pull this away, almost like you're unpeeling a hot dog bun, and then you get a nice looking shape, okay? So now I'm going to go into how to attach a handle and the way that I would do it. You want to cut an angle or a bevel onto the handle, okay? You typically want to clean it up. You mind if I use this? Sometimes you'll have like little bits or pieces on it, so you want to smooth it out. Do you mind just grabbing me a small sponge, please? Like one of the little yellow ones? Thanks, I forgot to grab one thing. Thank you. Okay, and you would do both sides of it, but I'm jumping around to make this a little easier. And then to create the amount of curve you want in the handle, because you have this bevel, you would put it down, and I'll put it over here, and then curl it backward, you see? And this creates the look of the handle. Now you should do this, what's that?
That's a nice looking,
Yeah,
I like that
it's not bad, right?
technique, yeah.
So this is, to me, is the easiest way to do it. However, you do miss out on some of the more decorative things. So it depends on what you're doing. If I'm just making mugs, this is the way I'm going to go. If I'm putting a decorative handle on a decorative vase, these other options are what I would do. Now, I recommend that you do this first, then trim your pieces. So that way this gives us just enough time, 10-15 minutes, to dry up and stay in the shape that you want it to be, and then you can attach it. So I'm going to show you how to attach. I'm going to do the same thing but on a drier piece, like so. Okay? I'll use this. You're going to want to slip and score, obviously. So you score wherever you decide the handle belongs. And you want to score the top and the bottom.
And what does that do? It just helps attach it, or it keeps it?
Yeah, so if you ever use epoxy, you know, it'll tell you to rough up the whatever you're gluing together. So that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm roughing it up, and then I'm going to use some water, but we have plenty of slips over here. I'd really recommend using the paper clay. That's really good. I don't particularly need it because I'm not worrying about keeping this, but if you want, use the paper clay. That'll really make sure it sticks very well. It acts like glue, and what you're doing by roughing this up on both sides, you're allowing the glue to seep in and stick things together. So then I'm going to score this side over here. And in my case, I'm just going to use a sponge and wet it, but like I said, you can use slip, or you can use the paper clay slip. That's really going to work well for you. And then I want to attach, okay? Now I recommend to do this on like a dry sponge or a piece of foam, so that way you don't ruin the shape of your mug, because as you can see me just pressing here, it's doing it. But again, this is just a tube, so I'm not worried about the integrity of the look of the tube right now. So I start by just blending with my finger. You can use water on your finger or not, it's up to you. Once I have this attached here, I'm then going to trim off a little bit of the underside, score this, a little bit of water, and then I'm going to attach here. Now once this is attached and blended, I then move on to using tools. And then I'm going to blend with some tools, and I'm also going to add on a coil. Okay? Not everyone does a coil. I like to do it. I feel it adds structural integrity, right? So I would put a coil around the top, like so, okay? And I'd blend all of that together. and I want to make sure everything is nice and seamless, okay? Like I said, there's a previous video that I shot at another studio, Playhouse Brooklyn, and I go into way more intricate detail and precision of how I do this. This one was more about your options decoratively, okay? Now once this is done here, and I've blended it with tools, I'm then going to want to blend using, I could use a paintbrush as another step. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go straight to using my scouring pad. Okay? And I want to blend using my scouring pad. This really gets any sort of, just like you would on your bone dry stuff, it really kind of like sands it down. It doesn't make it smooth, but it makes it clean. And then finally, I would come back and use my sponge and smooth it out. And even though this was done fast, you can see it's stuck on there, right? Now the last and most important thing in terms of being done with your handle is you want to store them upside down, right? Because you want the gravity to push the handle into the joint, whereas if you do it this way, it's sort of gently pulling it away and can break it off. So by doing it like this and storing it upside down, you're letting gravity work for you, and you want to keep these covered. So you don't want to try and fire these pieces for at least 1 to 2 weeks after you attach the handle. Reasonably speaking, and I say 1 to 2 weeks because you guys are here once a week. If I was doing this at home, like I'd wait 3 or 4 days, but you want it to dry slowly. You don't want to rush the drying because this is going to be the thing that cracks and breaks the easiest of everything that you do. So you let it sit, you let it get really bone dry. You might want to come and finish it off like you normally would with your scouring pad. Maybe you can go over this one more time, and then you can put it in to be fired. Now if it comes out of the firing without any cracks, you're really in good shape. You glaze it. You might see a crack or two. What usually that is a superficial crack from maybe the coil. Most likely if it comes out and it's solid looking from the glaze, but just a little crack, it's pretty solidly on there, it's probably just superficial. And it's up to you if you want to live with it or you don't like it. Questions?
Thank you.
All right, so you have a lot of variety of how you can make a handle that can look pretty cool.